Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank where I climb the Online Series 12 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we're featuring a really fun team centered around Xerneas. This team was built by Binjie Wang, who's been one of my favorite players in team builders in Sword and Shield. He's always coming up with really innovative stuff, and he actually finished in the top 30 of the previous rank season with this team. I think Xerneas as a Pokemon has definitely been a little bit underexplored in this format, and I really like how Binjie has built a team to support it as well as can be. So, as always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, and details for the team are in the description below, including a rental, paste, and Binjie's Twitter. But if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps linked in the description below, and thanks so much as always for watching. If you enjoy, please show your support by leaving a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. So, let's talk about the Xerneas here, right? First of all, you might be thinking, okay, using Xerneas in this format is really difficult, right? There's Zacian everywhere, there are a lot of other steel restricteds like Dialga and Solgaleo as well. How in the world do you make Xerneas work? And this team has so many different answers to support Xerneas. First of all, we gotta talk about Imprison Max Speed Zacian. Now, Zacian in itself is a really good counter into Xerneas because even with Intimidate, you just absolutely demolish it, and that's part of the reason why not many players have actually been able to build effective teams around Xerneas. Imprison Zacian is such a smart tech because it directly counters opposing Zacians, and it also takes advantage of the fact that a lot of Zacians these days aren't actually running max speed and instead are a little bit bulkier, but as a result compromise some EVs in speed, right? And so max speed Zacian here with Imprison is really nice for two reasons. One, even if you're up against opposing max speed Zacians, at worst you speed tie, right? And against any other Zacian set, you will always just be able to get the Imprison off before they can even move. Second of all, this Xerneas has Hyper Beam, which turns into Max Strike. What this allows you to do is Max Xerneas after getting a Geomancy off, Max Strike your opponent, and then if you have Zacian out next to Xerneas, Zacian has a guaranteed Imprison, which will deny your opponent's Zacian from getting any of their Behemoth Blades or Play Roughs off, right? And that's so big because then you essentially can't even hit the Xerneas, and by imprisoning Protect, you also then can safely go for double ups in subsequent turns, right? And, you know, important to note that with Zacian, you're not just imprisoning Protect from opposing Zacians, but you're imprisoning Protect from any Pokemon, allowing you to just constantly get damage. And so with this team, you can actually just go Indeedee Xerneas lead, follow me Geomancy turn 1, sack Indeedee, bring in Zacian turn 2, and if they have Zacian out, go for Max Strike into Imprison, for example, or just go for Max Strike into damage from Behemoth Blade on Zacian or Earthquake from Life Orb Landorus-T, for example. The team also has Life Orb Lando-T plus Indeedee, which is a combo that I think I've seen pop up a little bit more. It's not really anything new, but it does do fairly well into the Sun compositions that are running around at the moment, as you can just go for a Swords Dance. Immediately, Indeedee can help you go for like Helping Hand into Max Rockfall on like Charizards, for example. And then you can also, just do large amounts of damage to almost everything on that Sun composition that's really popular at the moment. So that's one core, and then you've got Torkoal plus Venu as well. And the Torkoal and Venu here are also pretty cool, right? Because the Torkoal is a Shuca Berry set. Shuca is really nice because it allows you to survive max Quakes from Pokemon like Landorus-T. And you've also got Yawn on Body Press. That's pretty standard. Now, normally you expect to see something like Burning Jealousy on Torkoals like this, but there's actually Overheat on Torkoal here, which I really like, because it actually allows you to do huge amounts of damage that normally your opponents aren't going to expect from Torkoal, right? And this allows you to snipe down opposing Zacians and Amoongusses, for example, and both of those Pokemon can be pretty annoying to deal with otherwise. Finally, you've got Weakness Policy Venusaur with Weather Ball, Sleep Powder, Earth Power, and Frenzy Plant. So this is, a set that likes to max most of the time. The cool thing about this team, I think, is that Venu, Lando, and Xerneas are all really good max options, and Venu and Xerneas are actually both really solid outside of max as well. In fact, Xerneas normally not a max option. With this team, it makes sense thanks to Hyper Beam turning into Max Strike as well as Imprison support from Zacian. But Venu and Lando are both Pokemon that really like to Dynamax. But the thing about the Venusaur here is even if you don't Dynamax, you can always pressure with Sleep Powder, which is valuable. So yeah, I think Binjie, the original team creator, said it best, where this is actually a team that's often centered around early game Xerneas rather than late game Xerneas. It's not about wiping your opponent's Pokemon out and then setting up Geomancy. It's actually more frequently about setting up Geomancy on turn 1 or turn 2 of the game, and then trying to sweep from there by bringing in support like Zacian and Venu and Landorus after that. So I think this is definitely a game changer. It has honestly opened my eyes to how you can Dynamax Xerneas and how you don't just need to use Dazzling Gleam, Moonblast, Protect, Geomancy as a moveset, and how you can use Max Strike in combination with other strong, combos to really mess up your opponent. So yeah, I think this is a really cool way to run Xerneas. I think it's the best way I've seen to use it consistently in the format at the moment. So thanks to Binjie for the team. And before we get started, question of the day, I want to know, how would you rate Gen 6 out of 10? Just because, Xerneas obviously coming from Gen 6. So let me know your answers in the comment section below, and let's get started. Alright, first game of the day, and we're up against Dialga, Zacian, Landorus, Grimm, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. This might be a team that Marco Fierro built, and I think a friend of his did very well with it in the last International Challenge. So if I remember correctly, that was like Sash Grimm, maybe Banded Urshifu. I think it may have been Scarf Landorus-T. So the fun thing about this team is this mode. Indeedee Xerneas lead, follow me into Geomancy, then max the Xerneas and strike into like Imprison or just attack with the Zacian. Sun's also not bad here, right? Like what if I just went Torkoal Venu? Then I do have to worry about Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl plus Dialga's lead isn't particularly fun, so honestly here I'm down for the Indeedee plus Xern lead, because that sets up Psychic Terrain, Zacian in the back, and then for the last one, Torkoal's actually not terrible. Lando does have Intimidate, which I think is decently valuable here into their Landorus and Zacian. So we have a lot of options here, but I just wanted to show off the Xerneas, and like the thing is that they have two Steel types. But what this team does really well is make it harder for the Steel types to actually thrive. So I think Torkoal Venu is also acceptable as a mode here. The problem with Torkoal Venu is that Grimm plus Dialga is actually really scary because they can go like Fake Tears into Max Hailstorm. They can go for, you know, Thunder Wave or Scary Face immediately onto the Venusaur. And I kind of expect that as the lead. But it's actually Dialga plus Landorus-T. Okay, that also makes some sense. Given this lead, then what do I want to do? They could Bulldoze theoretically with Landorus-T on turn 1. Bulldoze into Steel Spike on Indeedee. Okay. But the thing here is that Xern is max speed, so if I get the Geomancy off, even if you are Scarf Landorus-T, I'll pace you next turn, which is a pretty big deal. So I think turn 1 I do want to just go for Follow Me into Geomancy. And just get Xerneas set up immediately. Then we can bring out either my own Landorus or Zacian. They're actually going to switch out Lando. Okay, cool. Into Zacian. I just really want to show off Imprison on Zacian here, so that's what I'm aiming for. I might not even really necessarily need it, but I do want to assume that there's Zacian's max speed until I see otherwise. Okay, Dialga's going to max. No surprise there. I think the idea here is we get Geomancy up on turn 1. Turn 2, I protect with the Xerneas, and I either just go for a Follow Me, or I could actually switch Indeedee out into Landorus and get a quick Intimidate onto their Zacian, although I don't think that's actually super helpful here. Okay, so here's Follow Me to get things started. There's Geomancy, nice. Now where do we go from here? Depends on what Dialga goes for, but because of Focus Sash, I'm going to survive anything other than like a crit Life Orb Max Hailstorm, because then the Hail would finish us off. So, Steel Spike into Xerneas seems like the most obvious option right now. And that would get redirected into Indeedee. And they go for Quake. Okay, Quake also makes sense, get a special defense boost, can totally respect that. Fine by me. I think this next turn, I guess the only tricky thing about this next turn is the fact that they can just Steel Spike me, right? So like Indeedee can go for a Follow Me, sure. That's going to redirect Zacian speaking the Blade away, but then Dialga still gets a Steel Spike into Xerneas. I could Follow Me Max Guard, preventing any damage. I'm actually pretty interested by that, I think. The reason I'm going for this is because I think Steel Spike through the Protect just does way too much damage. And so the only interesting thing now is this next turn, what do I want to go for, right? I get a free switch into either my Landorus-T, which actually isn't a terrible option, because actually with Landorus-T, I can just max strike into Life Orb Earthquake. And that's pretty powerful here. Yeah, I actually kind of like that right now. Because the thing about the Xerneas here is I don't really need it Dynamaxed, right? But I'm maxing kind of defensively this turn. Yep, there's Behemoth Blade. The other thing is that with Zacians on these teams, like, they are very likely max speed, and so I don't want to take the risk of bringing in my Zacian. Also, like, yeah, going for Imprison is kind of fancy for a turn, but then the Dialga can just one-shot my Zacian, right? So why go for that? It actually did go for a Quake for a special defense boost, which makes some sense. Now let's bring out Landorus-T. So Landorus-T out now, I can go for Max Strike onto the Zacian slot into Earthquake. So then we, like, Imprison might not actually necessarily be relevant, but I'd rather just go for this since I have the KO in front of me. And then Xerneas just can max Starfall / Dazzling Gleam everything else, right? Zacian here sure could switch out into Landorus-T. I think I'd be okay with that. Wouldn't be the end of the world. The question here is whether or not they even expect Max Strike, right? Because that's obviously not a very common attack from Xerneas, but this team having been, you know, one of the most, if not the most notable Xerneas team that I've seen in Series 12 so far, like, once you run into it a couple of times, you'll know the moveset, right? So we'll see, but if we could just eliminate Zacian here with the Strike and the EQ combo and get that damage on a Dialga, that would be awesome. Especially at Life Orb EQ here, that's really going to pack a punch against both. Nice, they stay in. So, beautiful, Xerneas gets that Max Strike off into the Zacian slot. That's going to lower its speed immediately, thanks to Dynamic Speed now. Landorus-T should be able to outspeed the Zacian and finish it off with an Earthquake. Beautiful. The only downside is I have to target myself with Earthquake, and Dialga here might go for a Steel Spike, which is obviously still going to hurt the Xerneas, but we're at +2 special defense, so I at least expect to survive the turn. Okay, they actually offer Hailstorm instead. Cool. Works out for me. I mean, the Hailstorm there makes a lot of sense, right? The idea is to just pick up a knockout, plus you might expect the Xerneas to actually max guard there. I could see my opponent maybe expecting, yeah, I mean, just trying to Behemoth Blade Xerneas, Hailstorm into the Landorus slot, but this works out even better. So the defensive max guard might not necessarily have been necessary, but the thing is I was expecting a Steel Spike there, and a Steel Spike, Life Orb Steel Spike through Protect is still going to pack a punch even with us being at +2 special defense. Cool, and Rillaboom comes out. This is perfect. Because the thing is, we've timed this really well, right? Like, yeah, Rillaboom comes out, but you can only fake out the Zacian as of right now. And what's really sick is my Xerneas can change the terrain via Max Starfall, thus not allowing Rillaboom to go for Grassy Glides in subsequent turns. So right now, what I'm going to do is just target the Dialga slot, because that's the main thing that's pressuring me with damage right now. And I'm just going to Behemoth Blade into the Rillaboom slot. So we're going to go for Max Starfall. And this should put us in a very, very commanding position. And they actually recognize, yeah, there's not much they can do, and they just end up forfeiting. So this is the power of Xerneas, right? Like, Max Strike is a really intriguing option, and that single Max Strike completely changed the pace of this game, right? And yeah, I don't think there was really much that my opponent could do in this endgame because Xerneas was just so strong into my opponent's entire team, right? And the cool thing about Xerneas is, like, when you're Dynamax, you can do it more defensively, just, you know, survive with Xerneas for longer. And the thing is, even after your Dynamax ends, well, that's great. You can just click Dazzling Gleam and actually, you know, get spread type damage rather than just targeting one Pokemon at a time. So yeah, I think that game was like the perfect demonstration of how you can just lead Indeedee plus Xerneas aggressively, even into a team that has dual Steel-type restricted Pokemon in Dialga and Zacian. So really happy to show off that. Unfortunately, we didn't really get the Imprison off, but we didn't really need it. And, you know, I saw the KO in front of me on Zacian and just wanted to take it. And as soon as we got that turn correct, I think the game was going to be very difficult for my opponent to win. The main thing I was probably scared about was like a Grimmsnarl on the back, because then it can like provide speed control via Thunder Wave or Scary Face, but even then it would be tough for my opponent to mount a comeback from that angle, especially because we had basically stalled out their Dynamax and had one extra turn from our end, and then the Xerneas could also change the terrain. So yeah, not much my opponent could do from that angle, and I think as you can see they recognize that. So let's keep things going. Alright. Next game here, and we're up against Zacian, Ogre, Indeedee, Kartana, Rillaboom, and Regidrago. So, a lot of interesting options here. I mean, I think Venu, Torkoal, Zacian, and Xerneas is a pretty solid 4 here. I'm trying to think what the scariest lead for my opponent is. Honestly, Indeedee Kartana is kind of scary, I guess. Because with Indeedee Kartana, actually, I can't really do very much against that early. Especially with Kartana being able to Airstream Kyogre and Zacian when it's out next to it. Oh, we do have policy on Venu, though, which is interesting. So, like, I'm pretty intrigued by the idea of leading Venusaur plus Zacian, and then Xerneas plus Torkoal in the back. I think you could approach this game in so many different ways, by the way. Like, you could lead Landorus plus Indeedee, you could just go Venu Torkoal immediately, although that's risky, because then they just takes a Kyogre switch in to slow down the Venu. Indeedee Xerneas here is still interesting to me as well, but then the problem is that, like, the Xerneas is pretty weak into the Kartana, and I think Venu is incredibly offensively here, right? Like, I can Max Flare Kartana with the Weather Ball / Max Strike. I can Vine Lash Kyogre, Quake / Flare into Zacian. So if I were my opponent, I would very heavily prioritize Indeedee here. And that's what they go for, yep. Indeedee and Zacian. Well, this is interesting, because I've got Imprison. So, if you're not max speed, you get the Intrepid Sword off here first. Like, if you're not max speed, or I just win a speed tie, you are in so much trouble right now. Okay, and there's Psychic Seed. The thing is, Imprison here is just so strong that, I don't really want to switch on into Torkoal or Xerneas. Like, I'm honestly down to just Dynamax, go for Vine Lash onto Indeedee, and just Imprison. Do I need a Vine Lash on turn 1, actually, is a question? Assuming we get Imprison off, right? Because we could Quake as well, and save Vine Lash for later. Okay. Yeah. Let's go for Imprison and Quake. Alright, they stay in, so at worst, it's a speed tie, and if we win the speed tie / win the 50-50 coin flip here, we're going to be in amazing shape. And at best, it's just not a speed tie, and we just crush it right from turn 1. So let's see. It is a little bit scary not knowing my opponent's Zacian speed. Okay, and then he goes for Follow Me. That's not surprising. That's expected here. Nice. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay. Now, normally you're probably wondering, okay, you didn't go for Vine Lash there, so why, right? But the thing is that I actually want to stagger the Vine Lash damage a little bit in this game because I don't need it immediately right now. Now, this next turn is interesting, right? Because I've gotten the Imprison off. So if you're my opponent, this Zacian cannot do anything. It can't protect Behemoth Blade or play rough. So at best, you can Sacred Sword or you can switch out. So this turn now, I am going to go for the Vine Lash onto the Zacian slot, and I am going to Behemoth Blade into the Zacian slot as well because you can't protect it. If Indeedee goes for Follow Me. Okay, I mean, I don't think it was like over. But hey, we got to feature the Xerneas and we got to feature the Imprison Zacian within the first 2 games. So I'll take it. That's like the crazy thing about this Imprison set, right? It's like a lot of players right now are also opting for slower Zacian sets, and so you really punish those. And even if you're max speed, once again, like you have the 50-50 speed tie. And what you ideally want to do is like max Xerneas to max strike your opponent, so then you guarantee outspeed the opposing Zacians. Post Geomancy with Xerneas, I should say. But in this case, yeah, like I don't know if it was a speed tie, but we did get the Intrepid Sword off as well first. And so yeah, either way though, it would have been really difficult for my opponent to come back from that angle because it's like I basically. You had no switching into that double up other than, I guess, Kartana coming out. But even Kartana coming out there still takes a lot, like, you know, about 50% or so. And then we would get the residual damage really ticking turn after turn as well. So I felt really good about my position after turn 1, but she could have played it out a little bit more. But that's exactly what Imprison Zacian can do. So let's keep things going. Third match here, and we're up against a pretty standard Palkia Calyrex-I Ice Rider team. Now, this team has honestly really underperformed in live tournaments relative to my expectations for it. but it's still really good, and I feel like a lot of players have still done really well with it on the ladder. And actually, there was a regionals in Taiwan, I believe it was recently, that had 3 players in the top 8, I think, with the core. So it's still really solid. It just like definitely did a little bit worse at European and the US regionals than I'd expected. So Trick Room's obviously a problem here, but we do have Yawn Torkoal, which is handy. Amoonguss is a problem, for sure. It's a very big problem, actually. Venu is probably the best max option here, especially because it's immune to Amoonguss as well. If I were my opponent and I wanted to set up Trick Room, what would I lead with here? Amoonguss Palkia, Amoonguss Dusclops. Yeah, Amoonguss Dusclops is not fun here, is it? Nope, that is no fun. Okay, Zacian, Venu, Torkoal, Xerneas? This is not my best team preview. Like, I just don't know what the best approach is here, though. Like, I could go with Indeedee mainly because of redirection and Focus Sash as a way to stall out their Trick Room. Because essentially in this game, I'm not going to deny them Trick Room. I guess the other part of the like concerning thing here is that they do have a Tapu Fini in team preview. Meaning, like, Yawn from Torkoal may be a little bit less effective, but it's hard to bring all of the Pokemon all at once, right? Yeah, so they go with Dusclops and Amoonguss. This is, like, one of the best leads you can go with to actually guarantee Trick Room. But, actually, Venusaur here can just Sleep Powder into the Dusclops. I'm intrigued by that. I mean, if we hit it, they're really in some trouble here. Like, Sleep Powder Protect turn 1 is relatively safe. It's just that, like, I don't like gambling on Sleep Powder turns. I didn't think about just leading Venu for Sleep Powder, though. So, like, maybe Venu and Xerneas actually could have worked by just Sleep Powder Geomancy. I guess they could switch Amoonguss out into Fini here. But then it means, like, there's no way you don't have Palkia and Calyrex in the back, right? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna just Sleep Powder Protect turn 1. Vine Lash is really not good right now. Did they actually bring Fini? No, that's Incin. Okay, but that's also interesting because that, once again, means you did drop one of your restricted, huh? It's probably Palkia that is so bad into both Zacian and Xerneas here. Okay, we do hit Sleep Powder, which is very fortunate. I really want to max Venu here, I think. Because the residual this turn against Dusclops is actually so good. Calyrex-I should be my opponent's last Pokemon. So let's keep that in mind. So, like, I'm down, honestly, to just Dynamax and go for Vine Lash. The question is, do I want to contemplate switching out? I'm not even sure they'll Fake Out here, to be honest. I mean, they could just Flare Blitz me. The reason I want to stay in here is because even though Zacian's intimidated, it's still one of my best attackers to use. And if I switch it out, like, I'm rather bringing in Torkoal, which I guess has Overheat, but don't love that. And then I could bring out Xerneas, and now Xerneas is not honestly a terrible consideration from this angle, but here's the thing, right? If my opponent tries to go for, like, if Dusclops stays asleep for another turn here, we're in amazing shape. Yeah, they don't click Fake Out either. It could be Party Shot into Venu, because I think my obvious play was to switch out Zacian here, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they just went for a Flare Blitz onto the Zacian slot immediately. That was great damage from Blade, by the way, but Vine Lash isn't finishing it off, so we're going to need a 2-turn sleep here. And if we get it, things get really interesting. Yep, Parting Shot into Venu, perfect, okay. Don't really care about that because I now have gotten my residual damage up, which is what I was looking for. But the big question is whether or not Dusclops stays asleep for another turn right now. You know, it's funny because I was like, oh, I'm probably not going to be able to deny Trick Room outright in this game, but if they actually stay asleep for another turn, we will have actually just denied Trick Room. But they wake up. I can't be too upset about that, though, because the odds of you hitting Sleep Powder and then getting a 2 or 3 turn sleep aren't exactly amazing. It's more in my opponent's favor than mine. But that definitely stings because now the game is a lot tougher. Honestly, though, I'm pretty happy about how I played that. I mean, what else could I have really done there? I guess lead Zern. It's like, if they do get a 2 or 3 turn sleep there, they're in such bad shape. Like, so bad to the point where I think it'd actually be pretty hard for them to win, because they wouldn't be able to get Trick Room up very easily. I guess Calyrex-I could still be running Trick Room, right? Spore and a Zacian here is the obvious play for them. They could Pain Split it as well. I'm just Vine Lashing and protecting here. They could switch Amoonguss out, though, into... Okay, they don't switch. The reason I Vine Lash Dusclops, by the way, is because Pain Split's a huge, huge nuisance for me here. Yeah, they just Will-O-Wisp Zacian. Okay, works for me. Oh no, it's Pollen Puff. I just realized that as the turn was happening. I was like, wait, why didn't you Pain Split? Okay. Oh, Pollen Puff is such a nightmare. Like, this is the thing, right? This core is so defensive, but it is so hard for me to break through right now. They're probably going to Pollen Puff again, so honestly, I'll tell you what. I'm down to just go for the Max Flare onto the Amoonguss right now and hard switch into Torkoal. The upside is that my opponent has actually gotten any damage off, but the thing is that they're stalling out my Vine Lash residual so darn well right now. Okay. Shut up the sun. Yep, they Will-O-Wisp, that's fine. Another Pollen Puff, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, how frustrating. Well done, though. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why you run Pollen Puff, right? Like, I just can't do anything into Dusclops right now. Is Flare one-shot Amoonguss? Oh my gosh. Oh, no, we're at -1, so definitely not. Yeah. Okay. Now what? I have a free Overheat into the Amoonguss slot. Amoonguss going out into Incineroar certainly makes a lot of sense, but I've also got a free Sleep Powder right now onto the Dusclops slot. So, even though I think it's likely Amoonguss switches out here, I'm still down to Overheat it, because I don't want it to keep clicking Pollen Puff. And the thing is, like, right now, my opponent's just dancing, like, with Amoonguss, Dusclops, and Incin, right? Oh! Okay, well, they might be Goggles here, so let's not get too excited yet. Okay. Either way, though. Cool. Okay, Amoonguss protects, that's fair. But if you're not Goggles here and I hit Sleep Powder, that's amazing for me. Okay, and you're not Goggles. Very, very interesting. This is an angle to actually get Geomancy Xerneas up. Now, Amoonguss this turn surely is going to switch out, and if I were them, I would probably just go back out into Dusclops. So let's take this opportunity to go out into the Xerneas now. The thing is, I think I'm okay just going for Overheat onto Amoonguss, because Overheat plus Dazzling Gleam will most likely prevent them from getting another Trick Room up in this game. Yep, there's Dusclops. I guess unless Dazzling Gleam does not KO the Dusclops. There's a chance it doesn't, right? This has been such an interesting game. It's been like 9 minutes and my opponent actually hasn't done any damage to me yet, but if anything, their position is still very scary. Okay, Sun Boosted Overheat. How are we looking here? Ugh, not as much as I would have liked, to be honest, but I think Gleam and Overheat should finish it off here. And the scary thing, obviously, is that my opponent hasn't even Dynamaxed yet. I mean, is them getting another Trick Room up even that bad for me? This turn is a big deal, because it's like, what do you do with Incin? Do you just stay in? I don't want them to get another Trick Room up here, I think, so I will just Dazzling and Overheat. Late game Calyrex Ice Rider is looking still really scary, by the way. Okay, Incin does stay asleep. Nice. Yeah, they try to Trick Room here. Okay, so that works out. The problem now is that my opponent gets Calyrex Ice Rider in for free. And they can finally Dynamax that Pokemon. I think the core of Instinct, Calyrex, Ice Rider, and Amoonguss is still enough for my opponent to potentially win this game. Yep, there it is. The only interesting thing is, like, maybe I should have let them set up Trick Room, because if they set up Trick Room, then the Torkoal under Trick Room is actually really incredible. So I don't know if it was actually correct to go for the KO the way I did there. I don't have a free switching into Max Quakes right now. Instinct could just Flare Blitz me, honestly, from this angle. I'm trying to think of a way to win where I don't rely on Sleep Powder from Venu right now. Geomancy here is interesting to me. And Calyrex is so clearly their max option, so Geomancy into Yawn. If I were my opponent, I would just Parting Shot or Flare Blitz Zern and then Quake into the Torkoal slot, probably. Here's where things go really bad for them. If they, like, Hailstorm Xerneas, I survive, the instant stays asleep for another turn, then actually I think it's just game over from there. Because it'd mean I would get the Geomancy and the Yawn off. Can't help but think I should have maybe thought about clicking Body Press into Incin. The problem with this game is I had to, like, dance around my opponent after they set up Trick Room, but yeah, I like, can't help but wonder, like, Body Press into Incin instead just to eliminate it may have been the smarter play, rather than trying to aggressively deny them a second Trick Room, because Torkoal under Trick Room is actually really good into my opponent's team, so I think that actually might have been a pretty big mistake. They do manage to wake up. Okay, it's going to be Parting Shot on a Torkoal, actually. Well, that's interesting. Makes sense, though, because you do cover for me switching out. Now the interesting thing is, did you double up onto that slot? Like, Parting Shot plus Quake is always pretty safe there, I would argue. But my opponent's in a lot of trouble. Like, the scary thing about this game is I click Sleep Powder so much. You never want to rely on that attack that much. Okay, they actually Hailstorm into Zern. I feel like I should survive this, right? Nice. That's exactly the best case scenario I was talking about. Which is me actually getting a Yawn off here. Could be Lum Calyrex, though, which is scary, right? Okay. Yeah, I mean, this game is still, like, not over by any means. Amoonguss is faster than me here. I am just gonna Gleam. I mean, I think I'm fine with Gleam into Protect here. Just, are you Lumberry on Calyrex, right? Like, I would expect you to be Weakness Policy because, one, you have a Tapu Fini on your team, so why would you run Lum and Fini? And then, two, you also have Dusclops to activate, like, Weakness Policy, right? So I want to Gleam into Protect here. Okay. Ooh! I like that play. I didn't think about that. I think it's fine from this angle, though. Like, I think we're still in okay shape. Because the thing is, now you won't have Intimidate for Zacian in this endgame. But I think that's a great play. I like that a lot. Especially if you just Spore into Xerneas slot now. Okay, we do just get the KO onto Incin, which is great. Crit into Amoonguss, which is also fairly lucky. A lot of things going our way right now. Oh, and they actually Spore into a Torkoal slot. Interesting. Okay. I feel like you have to shut down the Xerneas slot there. 25 down to 12. Okay. I think with that, that should effectively win us the game. The Yawn was so big, though. Like, the fact that they didn't try to deny the Yawn there was huge. And the fact that they Hailstorm Xerneas rather than Quaking and we survived was amazing. Okay. So now what? I would expect my opponent to just double Protect here. I'm going to Gleam, switch Torkoal out, and they've already Dynamaxed. Wait, hold on. Let's be careful here. Do I need to actually switch out right now? Yeah, I'm at -5. I probably should. Especially if they double Protect. I'm just worried about, like, I don't want to switch into Venu and get hit by Glacial Land, so let's go out into Zacian. This game is still winnable, though, for sure. Okay. But I think now with Torkoal having this overheat, we look really good into Calyrex. Yeah, so I think they should be double protecting here. Which is frustrating, because if I switch Torkoal out into Venu last turn, this game would have been a done deal, because then I can just bring the Venu out and then bring Torkoal back in. But the thing is, now you just committed a double protect, right? So it's also going to be pretty hard to win. Okay. So Zern faints. Everyone takes a little bit of hail. Okay. I've got Shukaberry, but Shukaberry unfortunately is not actually relevant here given the Calyrex. If I go into Venusaur, I can obviously just Behemoth Blade into... or Earth Power into... I'm trying to think how I win this game even with them getting a double protect off. Because if I go into Venu right now, I can switch Zacian out into Torkoal and then just Earth Power them, but then they can just go for a double protect, right? If I go into Torkoal here, I can just Behemoth Blade Calyrex. I mean, their win con right now basically is a double protect, right? They need a lot to go right for them, but this is not over by any means. This has been a crazy game, though. The fact we actually got Xerneas off with Geomancy, though, I'm pretty happy about. Okay. Now, if I were my opponent, I would go for a double protect and try to either... No, I wouldn't trick him. I would try to crit high horsepower onto Zacian. I'd rather Yawn here and just Blade into Amoonguss. If they don't get the double protect off, the Yawn should win us the game effectively. Oh, they actually just go for Rage Powder. Okay. I don't think you can win with that then. Especially with us having Yawn. Actually, it's still possible to win because the Venusaur in the back doesn't have Protect. So if you actually one-shot my Zacian here, you can still win. Yep, there's high horsepower. Nice, okay, we survived. I expected to survive there, but I was a little bit nervous about the crit. What a game, though. This was a really interesting one. Okay, and now we can just double protect, and even if Calyrex Trick Room's not really much to worry about, so... The decision to play all into the Calyrex made a lot of sense, but the thing is they basically spent, like, what, 8 turns trying to get Calyrex, like, actually going, and then we hit them with the Yawn, and then they only got 1 turn of Dynamax, thus making it a lot harder for them to accomplish very much with it in this game, but, yeah. This was going to be a tricky one for Xerneas, although, like I mentioned, if my opponent just stayed asleep with Dusclops on... with the first like round of Sleep Powder, we actually would have been in really good shape. But in the end, like this wasn't an easy matchup, I think, because they have so much bulk to work with, and the Pollen Puff from Amoonguss also made it a nightmare because like all that work that I put in to try to knock out Dusclops early really didn't work out very well. And in the end, we were lucky too, right? I actually hit those Sleep Powders as well. If I miss any like early on, it puts us in really bad shape as well. But then the question is, do I have a more consistent way to approach the game, right? One thing about Pokemon is recognizing when you might need some favorable RNG. And in this game, like, I just don't have a super definitive answer, I feel like, into the Amoonguss Dusclops Insane Calyrex core, right? Trying to think what else I could have led against Amoonguss plus Dusclops specifically. Xerneas is interesting, but the thing is that I'm accepting... Oh, you know what you could do? Huh. No, this doesn't work. I was going to say Max Starfall with Xerneas, but then I can't put them to sleep. So, I don't think that's really good. I don't think Landorus is really good either, especially with Calyrex Ice Rider. I mean, Indeedee could be interesting, but yeah, I gotta go back to the drawing board a little bit and think about how we could win without clicking Sleep Powder too much, but this might just be one of those matchups where like Sleep Powder saves a matchup that otherwise would be very difficult to win and at least turns it into a matchup that you can play out, so yeah. Either way, though, I hope that this team has opened your eyes to how good Xerneas potentially can be in this format. We were able to do a lot with it in both the first game and the third game, and in the second game, of course, Imprison Zacian got to really come out and make our opponent forfeit in 1 turn. So that's the power of that set specifically. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thanks so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy. Thank you to Binja once again for the team, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.